regarding how it was constructed, the architecture, the open source software that we use, please contact me and we can set up a meeting for those of you that are more tech savvy and want to know more details about this. Some of the characteristics of this database include that we can control the permissions using emails that are basically given out to participants of the consortium, and those are at cgom.org. And then we have a whole list of curated catalogs. We have taxonomic identification within the database. We had to actually set up a different type of database for all the taxonomic information that is using electric, that was morphology, is also associated with a worm's AFI ID. So our system can communicate with worms and can update all the taxonomic information. For example, if there's a particular species that is reclassified. We are using international metadata standards and control vocabularies, and we have 2 levels of quality flags. One that is given by an individual researcher with respect to his or her data, and another that it indicates whether different data sets that are measuring the same thing can be integrated based on some intercomparison and intercalibration studies that we did. The database also has all the descriptive information of the analytical protocols that people use. It's a brief description, but enough for someone to know how the analyses were made, the researchers, and of course, all the contact information. And you can search the database and you can export in various formats. It's prepared to be interoperable. The database allows us, or this is the interface, one of the interfaces that allows you to search for the types of samples that we got. So here, for example, I was doing a search for the nutrients that had been collected in all the cruises. There were over 7,700 nutrients that were collected. And this is the spatial distribution. Each of these values basically is telling us that there is a certain number of samples that were collected at a given location within a certain radius. So this can be used so that someone that's not familiar with how the sampling was conducted can see what type of information they should find in the database. For searches, we developed this part of the application over time as well, in conjunction and working with the users, so it would be very user-friendly. You can use different types of filters that range from the type of analysis to depth ranges, salinity ranges, temperature ranges, and for taxonomy, you can do searches by a particular taxonomic level, and WORMS allows us to group information based on their taxonomic category. And then you can download the data either as Excel or in Ocean Data View format. And you also get with the download information regarding to who the person responsible is for that particular data set and the contact information. This is a summary of the number of results that are in the relational database. So these are basically point measurements that are either rates or measurements on particular samples of water or sediments. And you can see there's a lot of different types of samples, and some of them are very rich in the number of samples that we have, like hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons, of course, there's about 50 parameters measured on each hydrocarbon sample, so that generates a lot of information. Regarding all the taxonomic results, we have millions, around 11 million records, because there was quite a bit of an effort put on metabarcoding, and that generates a tremendous amount of information. And this Elasticsearch database allows us to do very sophisticated searches so that people can look at diversity or patterns of distribution at different levels. Now, in terms of the atlas was designed to reflect different research efforts throughout the consortium, and it has 11 volumes, which are here listed on the right. Those that are in red are volumes that are associated with either the oceanographic cruises or the monitoring efforts that were done in the seagrass meadows off Campeche and Yucatan. So basically, for all of these volumes, what it implied was the people that generated the data went through a process of analyzing the data, quality control, selecting which data they were going to portray, generating the maps, and then working with a group of geographers and cartographers to do the best possible spatial representation of the data. So there's over 1,300 maps in the atlas. All of them are extensively curated, and they are all integrated into these volumes. So each of this volume is basically a book that has 4 chapters. The first one lays out the conceptual basis for whatever the theme of a particular volume might be. And then there's a chapter that describes what each group did in terms of the sampling or the analysis of the data and how the cartography was designed. And the third chapter contains the map. Some of these volumes also have supplementary information, particularly those on marine turtles, cetaceans, and large pelagic fish and sharks. They have descriptive information regarding the species that are covered, and the one on bacteria does as well for the taxa that are presented in those volumes. So this is really a fabulous collection of information for the Gulf. And oh my goodness, sorry. Here we go. I just stopped the presentation. Okay. Now the atlas is available online. It is a public document. Why is this doing this? I'm sorry. I think I have to skip that. My apologies. I don't know why it's doing that, but it is a public document. You can find it at this website, atlassigom.cicese.mx. On the right of that webpage, you can make the webpage appear in English, and you can search for the maps. So if you want to know, for example, what is available in terms of currents, all you would do is put in the term currents into the search field, and it'll give you all the individual maps that have currents in the title. So that should help. So you can download each volume, the whole thing, or you can download each map individually with the metadata. I'm going to see if it lets me go back to full screen. One more time, otherwise I won't do it again. Nope, I don't know why it's doing that. My apologies, but it doesn't let me do this. Okay. Hopefully you can see this. This is basically illustrative for the rest of what I'm going to present. This is volume 1 on meteorology. They did a reanalysis of the of a data set, a very extensive data set that extends from 1979 to 2017. And they present monthly climatologies for about 10 different types of parameters, extreme values, extreme weather events. It's very rich, and I think it can be a very useful resource for a variety of sectors. It's really a problem. This is an example of one of the maps that we have in that section. And here we have the climatology of precipitation for May, June, July, and August. So of course we have in the atlas you'll find an annual climatology, but also the monthly climatology. And here are some other maps that are included in that volume, including the trajectories of tropical storms between 1851 and 2016 on the left, and then on the right we have the trajectories for different categories of maps, and on the bottom we have the number of tropical cyclones that made landfall throughout the Gulf of Mexico over that 170-year period. Volume 2 was covered by Jorge Zavala last week. That's the one on circulation. And then we have the one on biogeochemistry that Juan Carlos is going to share with you, and one on communities, which I edited. This is the type of information you can find in the one in communities. These are relative abundances of the dominant groups of zooplankton, for example. And this is some of the meta barcoding data for zooplankton. So you can look at that. It looks, you're integrating 2 different types of information here. Another of the volumes deals with the hydrocarbon concentrations in the Gulf, in the Gulf's waters, and also the sediments. And here we integrated data from different institutions into maps. This is, for example, the HAPs in surface waters, and we have concentrations, and we also have these histograms of the distribution of the values to allow people to see what the variability in those ranges are. This volume, volume 5, deals with biomarkers of contamination and the bioindicator of organisms, like I said, mostly benthic fishes. And there, what this group did was categorize the concentrations of different types of, in this case, hydrocarbon metabolites into low, medium, and high concentrations, and provide the information in a sort of a categorical scheme that allows to see which areas of the Gulf might be having higher burdens of some contaminants. For the seagrass volume, this is really beautiful. All the volumes, by the way, have beautiful pictures and images that are really worth seeing. We have all sorts of biological measurements on the communities and a lot of very detailed information on thalassia, as well as environmental data such as temperature, salinity, oxygen, and nutrients. And then we have 3 volumes that are focusing on large vertebrates, and we have cetaceans, turtles, and large pelagics. And in that case, what they did was look at, they did modeling to come up with habitat suitability maps. This is, for example, for yellowfin tuna, and these are the hotspots of areas of tuna, or I'm sorry, bony fish aggregations in the Gulf of Mexico. So each volume has its own approach. Finally, the one on bacteria, this is mostly doing metagenomics. They did a fantastic job using cutting-edge technologies to characterize bacterial communities, and they present different groups. This is just one example of the Alcanovorix genus, and they are presenting data for different levels on the water column, which you can see here on the right. This goes from the surface down to near the bottom, and also for sediment samples on the bottom. So this is very extensive. It's impossible to do it justice in a brief presentation, but since it's available publicly, I encourage you to take a look. And just to wrap it up, I want to thank the fantastic editorial committee that worked with me on this atlas, and of course the hundreds of people that contributed information to generate both the database and the atlas. Thank you. I will now stop sharing.